This short video is going to point out the major morphological and sexual and asexual features of the ferns that we have in the keys for the common ferns in each of the regions across the country. And we'll have different little segments for a variety of features, but these terms, and we will show you the structures or what we're describing in the key, and the key also has illustrations in the margins to support that, but we thought a very brief video would be very helpful to understanding what you are looking for to use the key. Here we have the Maidenhair Fern growing on a bank, and it is one of the ferns with a single stalk that comes up and divides and fans out in a semicircular to circular motion with all the leaflets in a line here. And the reproductive structures are on the underneath of this fern. So it's all, the frond includes everything, the sexual and asexual parts, and it's described this way in our key. In the regional keys you have some more terms that we have are the growth form of the ferns, clustered or not clustered. And here's a good example of clustering. You can see all these fronds are coming out of one point at the base of this fern, and that's a clustered fern, and you can spot them readily versus these what you might call a running fern, where all the fronds are coming off a rhizome, a horizontal root that's right below the surface of the ground, and then they take off from there and they're spreading versus the clump form. Another thing we have on this fern, and ferns for the reproductive structures, they come in two forms. The one form is that all the reproductive structures are on the underneath of the frond on the leaflets, and their little sporangia called sori on the bottom, and this is where the spores are released from. Very common type this way to have that, versus there's a smaller group of ferns, not that they're unusual or rare, that have a dimorphic type, and there's two types of dimorphic. One is there's a separate fertile structure on the frond inside somewhere on the frond, and the other one is a separate fertile frond versus the sterile, and I'll show you one of those in a little bit. Another very simple way to sort these ferns that are in the key is how the leaflets are divided on the frond. And in many field guides it's called once, twice, or thrice cut. 1, 2, or 3. So here on this sensitive fern, this is the frond, this is the leaflet, and you can see that these lobings do not go down to the midvein, so it's considered come up, once cut, versus on this interrupted fern, come up the frond once, and now you see these are deeply cut with individual leaflets, again, once, twice cut, twice cut, once cut with teeth, but they do not go down to the midrib. Twice, these are going to the midrib. And the other kind is the thrice cut. All right, let's do it. Come up the rachis once, twice, and then when you get to it, each one of those leaflets are divided again. They're toothed on the edge and cutting in almost to the midrib again. So once, twice, and each one of them thrice. So once one large leaflet comes up once. We count these, come up once, twice. And then these lacier ferns are up once, twice, thrice. And that's a 3-cut. It's a major break in the ferns that you'll have in our keys. We have here at this spot the other type of dimorphic. Remember, we had the ferns that had the sori, the sporangium on the underneath of the leaflet. And they're in different shapes. And in our key, you'll have to look whether they're round or linear and long. That's the one type. The other is they're a separate structure. We had the interrupted fern, which is along the frond. We had a whole zone of sporangium. Here, on this ostrich fern, we actually have a dimorphic structure. This is the fertile frond, and these are the sterile. And so here, sterile and fertile. Dimorphic. And it's in the key that way. It'll ask you, are there two types of frond structures on the stem or separate? And the separate will take you to sensitive fern and generally the ostrich fern, and the other one's for an interrupted fern, and I think one other. Then another term we'll use is the bottom of the frond, the stem, is scaly. And as I dig down here, oops, I broke it off, and I grab one of these fronds, you can see all the scaly, which are small leaflets on the stem, and it's scaly. And just to repeat, this fern is thrice cut. Once, twice, and 3 times. These leaflets here are cut again to nearly or all the way to the midrib. The ostrich fern over here is twice cut. Coming up, out, once, and then each one of these are cut into these very nice singular leaflets along the major leaflet here. And so those are our 2 types. We have the type of frond with all the sexual parts on the underside of the leaflet, and we have the dimorphic where it has 2 types of fronds, the fertile and the sterile. So here we have a bracken fern. Remember we talked about clumping ferns, ferns along a rhizome coming off and spreading. Well, actually the bracken fern has a long rhizome, and it's going from individual, well, they're actually all connected on that rhizome. And one of the key features that we talk about in our key, this is a single stem, but it divided 3 times near the top at the apex of the stem. So we have a 3-way division that you'll see in the key is the frond divided 3 ways, and that's what it's referencing. Where here with one of the beech ferns, you'll see in our key, it'll say the lower pinnae or leaflets descending, and you can see these are pointed downward and these are lateral, and so these are terms we have in the keys again for just quickly separating these different genera. Two leaves?
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.